Hello and welcome to the World Report. I'm Gaurie Dwivedi. This is a show that gets you all the major stories from around the world. First up, in a significant move, the Donald Trump administration in the US has stepped up its clash with Harvard University by stripping the school of its right to admit international students. The decision has left thousands of foreign students, including hundreds from India, in a state of complete uncertainty. The Trump administration has said it is halting Harvard University's ability to enroll international students and has ordered existing international students at the university to transfer or lose their legal status. The international students have been told to either transfer to another university or lose their status, something that has caused more anxiety amongst all students. Anywhere between 500 to 800 Indian students are in Harvard, and that is something that is now going to be very closely monitored as to how any solution could be found for them. Right now, 788 students from India are enrolled at the university, and the move could significantly affect the university, which enrolls nearly 6,800 international students, most of them in graduate programs. Meanwhile, a federal judge has blocked the Trump administration's wide-reaching effort to detain and deport international students. Separately, in a move that could reshape the future of international education in the US, Joseph Edlow, Trump's nominee for Director of US Citizenship and Immigration Services, has proposed terminating the Optional Practical Training Program, or the OPT. In fact, his argument and remarks came during a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing on Wednesday, and his words have sent alarm bells ringing across universities which rely very heavily on international students, most of which, of course, want OPT as a program. Tech companies and thousands of international students are relying on the post-graduation work authorizations to remain in the US, and these comments add to the uncertainty that they are all facing at the moment.
Program has been in place for a very long time. These policies have been in place for a long time, and Harvard brought these consequences upon themselves. They have promoted and allowed violent activity on campus. They have allowed anti-Semitism, participation with CCP and Chinese infiltration and influence on their campus, and they haven't protected their students. So we have given them multiple opportunities to share criminal activity with us, backgrounds on these students, to let us conduct the oversight into this program that is our responsibility, and they have refused to do so. So today I sent them a letter that said they will no longer be allowed to participate in this student exchange visitor program, and that's up to 27% of their enrolled students. So it's significant. Any foreign student that wishes to get an education in this country that is attending Harvard and not participating in this criminal activity, they will have to find another university to go to, because Harvard has chosen instead to not protect their students and to allow this kind of violent and discriminatory action continue.
All right, for more on this, let's now get in my colleague Vishal Vivek, who's joining us live to talk more about what exactly is it that is happening as far as the latest uncertainty that is unfolding. Vishal, at the end of the day, some of these comments that have been made by the government, the comments that have come in by Kristi Noem, essentially puts plans of thousands of international students into complete disarray.
That's exactly right, Gaurie, and these are certainly alarm bells for foreign students and particularly Indian students. Right now there are 800 students studying at the prestigious university, and there will be many more students in the waiting. What about the students who have just qualified to get into Harvard? It's one of the most prestigious and richest universities in the world. People toil for years to get into that university. What about them? And also the fact that there are several Israeli students studying at the Harvard University. What about them? So this whole motive of the US administration is under the scanner of many experts in the academia and elsewhere. But the US administration is hell-bent on, proving a point and saying that this needs to be curtailed because many anti-Semitic elements are there that needs to be culled out. So this back and forth has been going on for a while, and it has sort of reached a culmination where you can see that it's the international students that are bearing the brunt, and the fact that Harvard has attracted thousands of students for a millennia, that impression could be jeopardized. So it remains to be seen how Harvard responds to this, because in the recent weeks we have seen that Harvard has been standing its ground, but this is a really crucial moment for Harvard. How it responds will be interesting to see.
All right, Vishal, we leave it there. Thanks much for breaking that down for us, uncertainty for all those international students. And to talk more on that, let's get in Harvard alumni to understand the scale at which this is set to impact students around the world, including, of course, Indians as well. Richard Painter, who's an alumni of Harvard and a law professor at the University of Minnesota, joins us to talk more on this. Thank you so much, Professor Painter, for speaking to me. Let me start by asking you that as someone who's been shaped by the ecosystem of Harvard, what's your reaction to the kind of decisions that the Trump administration is looking to take, or has already taken, in fact?
Well, I have spent over 30 years teaching in several universities in the United States where international students are vitally important to the intellectual life of every university I've worked at. And it's very, very important that international students feel welcome in the United States. And now, for the first time in decades, we have a political situation where the Trump administration has sought to raise the hurdle for international students coming to the United States at many, many universities. Harvard has been singled out for particularly harsh treatment because Harvard will not agree to some of the demands of the Trump administration with respect to the administration of Harvard University on issues that have nothing to do with the vast majority of international students who come to the United States to study and to contribute to our intellectual life and who are welcome here.
Professor Painter, what about the crux of the argument essentially is that Harvard University promotes anti-Semitic comments and promotes that kind of thought. They haven't been able to back that with any argument. How do you feel about the comments that have been made against Harvard, particularly about anti-Semitic thoughts?
Well, the Trump administration has made similar allegations about many, many other universities in the United States. And there are concerns about some of the protests about the Israel-Hamas war getting out of hand and anti-Semitic slogans that have been repeated at these protests at many universities in the United States. This is a concern, but this has nothing to do with the vast majority of international students who come to American universities to study, not to protest, and certainly not to engage in anti-Semitic behavior. And it certainly does not help the United States at all to exclude international students from our universities, whether from Harvard or any other university, simply because a very small number of students engage in riotous conduct and anti-Semitic conduct and so forth.
And what about
and a lot of the students who are engaging in the bad behavior are Americans, American citizens, not international students at all. So this policy just doesn't make any sense.
Professor Painter, what about the options that these students who are impacted have? Do they have any options right now?
Well, Harvard has 8,000 or 9,000 international students who will be affected unless Harvard is successful in persuading a court to postpone or to cancel this decision of the Trump administration. But meanwhile, we have international students at many other universities in the United States who are concerned that they too could be targeted by the Trump administration and that they too could face hostility in the United States, which really is a tragedy for our country, which for decades has welcomed students from all over the world to come and study here and participate in American intellectual life.
Which brings me to ask, in terms of the legal options that Harvard has, they've said that they're going to sue, but what exactly are the legal avenues open to the university?
Well, the first issue here is that Harvard is not engaged in any conduct itself that would make Harvard an unsafe place for international students to study. The problems that have been identified with anti-Semitic protests involve a very small number of students and very few international students, but have taken place at universities all over the country. So Harvard could easily make a strong case that they are being singled out, that Harvard is being singled out with a broad sweeping prohibition on international students, which, by the way, would include students from Israel and other very, very close allies of the United States who would be prohibited from studying at Harvard because the Trump administration simply has a vindictive attitude toward Harvard at the moment.
And Professor Painter, which brings me to ask you my last question, which is, what precedent does this set for federal oversight of academic institutions? Does this move prompt a broader re-evaluation of international student programs across the U.S.?
Well, there has been a re-evaluation of international student programs across the United States, entirely apart from the initiatives here of the Trump administration. The very small number of international students who do engage in disruptive conduct, but very few. And indeed, there are American students who engage in disruptive conduct. We in the United States value international students, and I don't think that the Trump administration is going to deter universities from continuing to seek to attract international students to bring their perspective to our educational system. But the problems, once again, are problems that are not particular just to Harvard, but to many, many universities across the United States and around the world. And I think that many people here believe that international students shouldn't be singled out for discriminatory treatment, and Harvard itself shouldn't be singled out for retaliatory treatment by the Trump administration.
All right, we leave it there. Professor Painter, thank you so much for speaking to NDTV on an issue that impacts the world, including Indian students. In fact, let me now turn attention to the other big story that we are tracking on World Report. A shocking act of violence in Washington, D.C. 2 staff members from the Israeli embassy were shot dead outside the Capitol Jewish Museum. The suspect was a 31-year-old alias Rodriguez from Chicago, was arrested at the scene and has been charged with first-degree murder and the killing of 4 nationals, a crime eligible for the death penalty. Authorities say he shouted pro-Palestinian slogans, and they are now investigating the attack as a hate crime and suspected act of an anti-Semitic terrorist activity. World leaders have condemned the killings, calling it a brutal and targeted attack. Listen in to some of those reactions.
Last night in Washington, something horrific happened. A brutal terrorist shot in cold blood a young, beautiful couple, Yaron Lishinsky and Sarah Milgram. Yaron had just bought an engagement ring for Sarah. He was planning to give it to her in Jerusalem next week. They were planning to start a new and happy life together. Well, that tragically did not happen. Yaron and Sarah weren't the victims of a random crime. The terrorist who cruelly gunned them down did so for one reason and one reason alone. He wanted to kill Jews. And as he was taken away, he chanted, "Free Palestine." This is exactly the same chant we heard on October 7th.
The president and the attorney general have both indicated that, in cases where the death penalty is warranted and seems appropriate, we will use it. It's far too early to say whether that is the case, but this is a death penalty eligible case.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has accused Keir Starmer, Prime Minister of UK, French President Emmanuel Macron, and Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister, of emboldening Hamas after they called for a halt to Israel's military offensive and an end to restrictions on humanitarian aid in Gaza. Earlier this week, the leaders of the UK, France, and Canada condemned Israeli government's actions in Gaza, warning that the UK and some of its allies will take concrete actions, and in fact, they even threatened to snap trade ties with Israel unless there was a complete course correction.
I say to President Macron, Prime Minister Carney, and Prime Minister Starmer, when mass murderers, rapists, baby killers, and kidnappers thank you, you're on the wrong side of justice. You're on the wrong side of humanity. And you're on the wrong side of history. Now, these leaders may think that they're advancing peace. They're not. They're emboldening Hamas to continue fighting forever. And they give them hope to establish a second Palestinian state, from which Hamas will again seek to destroy the Jewish state. And mind you, it's not going to be a state free of Hamas. When you establish a Palestinian state, we've seen it. The radicals take over. Iran sends them in and they take over.
At a time when ties between India and Bangladesh are strained, New Delhi is already considering other options that bypass Dhaka to ensure that connectivity to the northeast of India is secure. This amid unwarranted comments on India's northeastern states from Bangladesh. Today at the Rising Northeast Summit, Business Summit, Prime Minister Modi said that India is working on the Kaladan project in Myanmar's Sitwe port that will directly link it to Kolkata port. The Prime Minister also said that Northeast will become the new trade gateway going forward. Russian forces will create a security buffer zone along the border with Ukraine. President Putin said in a government meeting on Thursday that would help prevent Ukraine from striking areas inside Russia with artillery. That's what Putin told a government meeting. But he gave no details of where the proposed buffer zone would be or how far it would stretch. President Putin said a year ago that a Russian offensive at the time aimed to create a buffer zone in Ukraine's northeastern Kharkiv region. A woman was shot by CIA security Thursday morning after she drove up to a gate at the agency's headquarters and failed to stop, sources said. The woman was taken to a medical facility with what law enforcement officials believed was a non-fatal gunshot wound to the upper body. The Food and Drug Administration's advisory committee unanimously recommended that newest vaccines for COVID should be updated to target a variant of strain currently on the rise. During a meeting on Thursday, the first since the Trump administration took office. Top government sources have told NDTV that India will formally raise concerns over the World Bank's expected $20 billion loan to Pakistan, $2 billion loan to Pakistan, which is likely to be approved in June. New Delhi is also planning to take up the issue with the Financial Action Task Force, also known as FATF, urging that Pakistan be put back on the grey list. The government is said to be disappointed with the IMF bailout that was granted to Pakistan on the 9th of May. Sources have said that India conveyed to IMF Chief Priscilla Georgieva that while India does not oppose aid to any country, past data shows that funds have often gone to fund the Pakistani army and the military system. As per IMF data, out of the 28 times that IMF has supported Pakistan, money has been used for arms and not fiscal health. Long-term net migration to Britain fell by 50% in 2024. Official data shows as fewer people arrived on work and study visas following rule changes to cut the number of arrivals. A sharp and unprecedented fall in the UK's net migration has reignited debate over the nation's identity, economy and political direction. This new data from the Office for National Statistics reveals that net migration dropped to 431,000 in 2024, nearly half the 860,000 mark that it was the previous year. This 49.9% decline marks the steepest annual percentage drop since the pandemic and the largest numerical fall on record. More than just numbers, this shift indicates a country recalibrating its place in the world, one that is struggling to strike a balance between openness and control, growth and cohesion, pragmatism and populism. According to PTI, the impact on the UK's tightening visa and immigration policies is reflected in the country's latest migration statistics that were released on Thursday, with the Indian students and workers among the largest group of foreigners to have left the country over the past year. On that note, a quick break. We return with lots more stories on the other side. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching The World Report. A quick check of some of the stories coming in from the world of business. First up, as per a report by the Financial Times, US President Donald Trump's trade negotiators are pushing the EU to make unilateral tariff reductions on American goods, saying without concessions, the bloc will not progress in talks to avoid the additional 20% reciprocal duties. US Trade Representative Jamieson Greer is preparing to tell European Trade Commissioner on Friday that a recent explanatory note shared by Brussels for the talks falls short of American expectations, the newspaper site said, citing unnamed sources. Finance ministers and central bank governors from the group of 7 democracies papered over their differences on Thursday, pledging to tackle excessive imbalances in the global economy and saying that they could increase sanctions on Russia. There had been doubts before the meeting whether it would issue a final communique in light of divisions over US tariffs and Washington's reluctance to refer to Russia's war on Ukraine as being illegal. From the world of sports, Novak Djokovic celebrated his 38th birthday in style as he defeated Matteo Orlandi 6-4, 6-4 in straight sets to reach the Geneva Open semi-finals. The 24-time Grand Slam champion avenged his last month's Madrid Open loss to the Italian and will next face Britain's Cameron Norrie. Djokovic is just 2 wins away to win his 100th title. Brazilian footballer and attacker Rafinha has extended his contract with La Liga champions till 2028. The 28-year-old's contract was earlier till June 2027. He joined the club in 2022 and since then has led the team to many victories with 34 goals and 25 assists in 56 appearances across all competitions. From the world of entertainment, some of today's most popular stars brought the glamour to Cannes on Thursday night as celebrities walked the red carpet for the annual AMFA Gala. Guests included Coleman Domingo, Michelle Rodriguez and several others, and all walking the red carpet in their finery. The red carpet is where, of course, all celebrities walk. Before the gala took 3 hours because there were so many people who were there in attendance waiting to meet all those people in their finery. Kim Kardashian has a big reason to celebrate. The reality star, who's 44, has revealed that she has graduated from her 4-year law office study program in a series of videos shared to her Instagram stories. The program took Kim 6 years instead of 4 years to complete due to COVID and her excessive workload. With that, it's a wrap of this edition of The World Report. Thanks so much for watching.